When someone has spent most of their life running from closeness, avoiding deep connections, and building walls so high they seem impossible to climb, change doesn't come with a dramatic explosion. It comes in the smallest, quietest of moves. Those moves may look insignificant on the surface, but they are the clearest signals of transformation. If you've ever dealt with someone who leans avoidant, you know that their comfort zone is distance. They protect themselves by staying detached, by withholding affection, by retreating when things get too intense. But when that same person begins to inch forward, when they make the tiniest effort to lean into you rather than away, that's not just behavior, it's proof of care. It's evidence of love trying to break through. You see, the truth about avoidant people is this: their conditioning makes them hesitant to express what they feel. Vulnerability doesn't feel natural to them. In fact, it feels dangerous. So when they dare to break that cycle, even in small ways, it's monumental. Maybe they don't flood you with words of affirmation, but suddenly they send a message first. Maybe they don't hold your hand all the time, but one night they reach out and don't let go. Maybe they've always avoided making plans, but this time they show up without you having to remind them. That's not an accident. That's not coincidence. That's a heart deciding it's safe enough to reveal itself one careful step at a time. We're taught to look for grand gestures, for the flowers, the declarations, the sweeping romances. But in the world of someone who has been avoidant, love doesn't roar at first. It whispers. It whispers through consistency. It whispers through effort. It whispers through the courage to show up even when every instinct inside them tells them to retreat. And here's the key: those tiny moves, repeated over and over, create trust. They create proof. They transform a relationship from uncertainty into connection. Think about it: when someone who normally pulls away during conflict stays in the room instead of walking out, that's a breakthrough. When someone who avoids intimacy chooses to share a piece of their past, even if it's small, that's a breakthrough. When someone who has spent years convincing themselves they don't need anyone starts to prioritize you in little practical ways, that's a breakthrough. Those micro actions are love in motion. They are the evidence that the armor is cracking, that the old survival strategies are being replaced with something real. And here's what makes it powerful: as change at this level is not about them becoming someone else overnight. It's about them proving with action that you matter. Every time they do something small that contradicts their old behavior, they are telling you, I care enough to challenge my own comfort zone. That is love at its most authentic. That is commitment without theatrics. That is a person showing you who they are becoming, not just who they've been. It's easy to miss these moments if you're looking for fireworks, but real growth often hides in subtlety. Love from someone who has lived behind walls won't always look like what you've seen in movies. It will look like eye contact that lingers longer than usual. It will look like a text that says, I was thinking about you. It will look like patience where there used to be frustration. It will look like them leaning closer when before they would lean away. These moments don't scream, but they speak volumes. And what makes it even more meaningful is the cost. For someone who has been avoidant, every step toward closeness is uncomfortable. It goes against their wiring. It feels unnatural. So when they choose to do it anyway, understand that it's not a small thing. It's everything. It's evidence of bravery. It's a decision to invest in connection rather than escape it. It's love proving itself through resilience and action rather than just words. Love is not theory. Love is not just a feeling floating in the air. Love is action. Love is proof. Love is those tiny moves that keep you in their world when their old patterns would have pushed you out. When an avoidant starts to show up, even imperfectly, they are breaking chains. They are saying, you matter more than my fear. And if you can recognize and honor those moves, you'll begin to see the transformation happening right in front of you. Safety always comes before expression. For someone who has lived their life in an avoidant pattern, as their first instinct is not to reveal their feelings, not to rush into vulnerability, but to test whether they are safe. This is why their love doesn't usually arrive in the form of big promises or emotional outbursts. It arrives through careful, almost invisible steps. An avoidant doesn't just wake up one day and pour their heart out. What they do instead is slowly, cautiously, and intentionally create little bridges between themselves and the person they're learning to trust. Those bridges are not built with grand gestures. They're built with the tiniest moves that signal something important is shifting inside them. Imagine someone who has always run from closeness suddenly staying in the moment a little longer. Maybe they've avoided physical touch for years, but now they allow their arm to rest against yours and they don't pull away. Maybe they never used to reach out first, but now your phone lights up with a simple message that says, how's your day? To the untrained eye, these things seem so small, almost forgettable. But in the life of an avoidant, those small gestures are like the first cracks of light breaking through a closed window. They are proof of care, as they are proof that safety has been established enough for them to risk showing what's inside. The fascinating part about avoidance is that their world is built on survival. Their old wiring tells them closeness equals danger, intimacy equals risk, vulnerability equals pain. So when they begin to make moves toward connection, even subtle ones, it means they are fighting against that wiring. They're overriding years of programming just to move an inch closer to you. That inch might look like them asking a follow-up question instead of changing the subject. It might look like them lingering at the door instead of leaving quickly. It might look like them letting you in on what they're thinking, even in the smallest detail. These moments are not random. They are intentional, and they are the truest indicators that something real is happening. We've been conditioned to equate love with grand declarations, the movie scenes where everything is dramatic and obvious. But in reality, love often shows up in subtlety, especially with someone who has avoided closeness for most of their life. You don't measure their care in flowers or long speeches. You measure it in their consistency. You measure it in the way they start to engage when their old self would have disengaged. You measure it in the way they allow you into their world, piece by piece, as if carefully handing you fragments of their heart to see if you'll hold them gently. And this is the paradox: the smaller the move, the bigger the meaning. Because for someone whose instinct is to run, staying is monumental. For someone who has practiced self-protection as a way of life, opening up even a fraction is an act of courage. That moment where they don't shut down in an argument, where they listen instead of withdraw, where they attempt to repair rather than retreat, is a breakthrough. It's not just an action, it's a declaration that you matter more than their fear. What makes this powerful is that it's not about words. Anyone can say, "I care about you." But for someone who avoids vulnerability, their actions are the purest proof. Those tiny moves are not casual. They cost them something. They stretch them. They push them into discomfort, and yet they do them anyway. That is not weakness. That is strength. That is transformation. That is someone rewriting their own story in real time. So when you see these moments, don't dismiss them. Recognize them for what they are, as they are evidence that safety has been created. They are evidence that someone who never thought they could lean into love is trying. They are evidence that care, connection, and trust are beginning to take root in a heart that once believed those things were impossible. Forget the words for a moment and pay attention to the patterns. An avoidant doesn't always come out and say what they feel, but their consistency is where the truth lies. Words can be easy, words can be rehearsed, but behavior is where care reveals itself. When someone who has built their life on distance begins to show up for you in steady, repeatable ways, you're not just witnessing a shift, you're witnessing transformation. It's in the phone call that arrives every evening, even if it's short. It's in the way they ask if you made it home safe, not once, but every single time. It's in the habit of checking in without needing a reason. Those actions, those rhythms, those predictable patterns are the fingerprints of love. For an avoidant, consistency does not come naturally. Their comfort zone is unpredictability. Their protection has always been the ability to detach whenever they felt the pressure of closeness. So when you notice them choosing steadiness, when you notice that they are anchoring themselves instead of drifting away, it means you matter enough for them to rewrite their own script. Think about how big that is. Someone who has been conditioned to escape is now learning to stay. Someone who once believed commitment was suffocating is now practicing reliability. That's not surface-level care. That's deep, intentional effort to build trust through action. The key is to recognize that consistency is not about grand gestures. It's not about dramatic confessions or over-the-top promises. It's about showing up in small, steady ways that stack on top of each other until they create a foundation. You might not notice it at first because the actions themselves are subtle. But over time, those subtle actions create stability. And stability is everything to someone who has spent their life avoiding intimacy. That morning text, that dinner planned in advance, that habit of remembering the little details about your life. Those things are the bricks of a new structure. The difference between words and actions is the difference between intention and commitment. Words are intention. They might mean well, but they don't require much. Actions are commitment. They require energy. They require thought, as they require the decision to prioritize you even when it's uncomfortable. When an avoidant begins to repeat those decisions day after day, they are showing you that they're not just experimenting with care. They're committing to it. Every repeated act is a piece of proof. Every time they show up the same way, it's them telling you, "I'm here and I'm choosing to be here again." And make no mistake, this consistency is not easy for them. For someone who has always felt safest in unpredictability, routine feels foreign, stability feels unnatural. Yet that's exactly why it's so meaningful. Each time they lean into a consistent behavior, they are stepping outside of their old identity. They are proving with action that you are not just another connection in their life. You are the one they are willing to stretch for. They are choosing the harder path because you are worth it. There's a power in watching someone shift from avoidance into consistency. It's like seeing a runner who has only ever sprinted finally commit to pacing themselves for the long haul. At first, they might stumble. They might miss a step here and there. But the longer they stay with it, the stronger the pattern becomes. That's how trust is built. That's how love solidifies. Not in the dramatic spikes, not in the occasional highs, but in the steady hum of consistency that proves care again and again. If you're looking closely, you'll see it. It's in the everyday moves, the things that are easy to dismiss. But when you look deeper, you realize they're not small at all, as they're monumental because they represent a choice against everything that feels natural to them. That consistency is their love letter, written not in words but in action, repeated until you can no longer deny its meaning. Breaking old conditioning is never a smooth or easy process. For someone who has lived much of their life in an avoidant pattern, their conditioning tells them to run, to detach, to shut down when intimacy begins to feel overwhelming. That conditioning was built to protect them. It's the shield that kept them from being hurt, the armor that helped them survive. But when you start to see them leaning in instead of retreating, when you witness them pushing back against the very habits that once defined them, you are watching something extraordinary. You are seeing a battle between fear and love is starting to win. Think about what it means for someone like this to choose closeness over distance. Every instinct in their body says, protect yourself, step away, don't risk it. Yet there they are sitting across from you, staying in the conversation, listening when they would normally shut down. That's not just a random choice. That's years of wiring being challenged. That's a heart saying, I want this connection enough to confront the discomfort. And that's where the truth lies, as every time they make the decision to stay, to talk, to share, they are rewriting the script of their past. It's not dramatic on the outside. To someone else, it might look like they just decided to open up a little or to show up when they were asked. But beneath the surface, it's massive. They're going against everything that feels safe and natural. They're teaching themselves a new pattern. They're replacing old reflexes with new responses. That's not easy. That's transformation happening in real time. When you've been avoidant, closeness feels like danger, intimacy feels like suffocation, dependence feels like weakness. So when you begin to act in ways that contradict those beliefs, it means something bigger is driving you. It means the connection matters more than the fear. It means the desire to love and to be loved is finally stronger than the impulse to escape. That's what makes those small, brave acts so powerful. They're not just little gestures of affection. They're symbolic victories over years of conditioning. Picture the avoidant who normally withdraws during conflict. This time, they take a deep breath, stay in the room, and say, let's figure this out. That's not a simple sentence. That's a revolution. Or imagine the avoidant who has always avoided making future plans. Suddenly, they ask, what are you doing next weekend? That's not a casual question. That's an act of trust, a sign that they are allowing themselves to imagine you in their future. These are the moments where you can literally see the old walls cracking. And what's most inspiring is that these shifts are rarely comfortable. Change never feels smooth when you're breaking decades of habit. For them, every small step forward probably feels like walking into fire. But they do it anyway. That willingness to walk into discomfort is love in its rawest form. It's love that says, I would rather risk than repeat my old patterns. I would rather grow than retreat. I would rather move toward you than hide behind the safety of my distance. Breaking conditioning isn't about one grand leap. It's about dozens, hundreds of tiny moves that slowly stack together until the old way no longer has power. Each move might seem small, but together they form a chain of proof that this person is evolving. They are proving that they can love, that they can connect, that they can show up even when it feels terrifying. And the more they practice, the more those new patterns begin to replace the old ones. That's how transformation becomes permanent. That's how someone who once ran from intimacy becomes someone who chooses it again and again. Love in action is different from love in words. Words can be beautiful, they can be poetic, they can even sound convincing. But for someone who has lived in an avoidant pattern, words are often a shield. They can say what they think you want to hear. They can keep things on the surface. They can use language as a way to avoid going deeper. But action doesn't lie. Action is the truth that cuts through the noise. And when someone who has spent their life avoiding closeness begins to show love in action, that is the purest proof that something inside them is shifting. As love in action looks like the tiny things that could easily be dismissed but carry massive weight. It looks like them remembering what you said weeks ago and bringing it up because they were actually listening. As it looks like them showing up for you in ways that are practical, tangible, undeniable. They might not say, I love you every day, but they bring you coffee because they know how you like it. They might not gush about their feelings, but they carve out time for you even when their instinct is to retreat. They might not flood you with compliments, but they do the hard work of showing up again and again. That is real love. That is care proving itself not through theory, but through action. For someone with an avoidant background, these actions are not small. They are monumental. Every time they choose to act in love, they are pushing past fear. Their old pattern says, stay distant, don't invest, don't risk. But their actions say, I'm willing to take that risk for you. That's not casual. That's not convenience. That is commitment. And when you start to see these small actions accumulate, you realize they are building a foundation that's stronger than any words could ever be. The truth is, love cannot just live in emotions. Feelings can come and go. Passion can fade. Words can sound empty if not backed up. But action creates evidence. Action builds trust. Action proves that someone is willing to move beyond themselves to show up for you. And for someone avoidant, this is the most powerful sign of all. Because for them, action is costly. It's uncomfortable. It requires courage. It requires breaking through the instinct to shut down. So when they choose to act in love, they are not just giving you care. They are proving their growth. Imagine the avoidant who once ignored birthdays, anniversaries, or milestones suddenly showing up with a thoughtful gesture. To someone else, it might look ordinary. To them, it is a declaration. I'm paying attention, you matter. Or picture the avoidant who always used to disappear in times of stress, now staying by your side, asking what you need, doing something about it. That's not just action. That's love overcoming fear. These are not random moments. They are conscious decisions that speak louder than any words. Love in action also shows up in the way they protect your space, respect your needs, and adapt to you instead of expecting you to adapt to them. As it shows up when they take responsibility instead of withdrawing, it shows up when they apologize, when they make repairs, when they follow through on promises instead of letting them fade into nothing. These are the moves that build unshakable trust. They may not come with fireworks, but they create something much stronger: consistency, safety, and depth. When you're dealing with someone who has struggled with avoidance, the proof of love will not always come wrapped in dramatic displays. It will come in the everyday actions, the choices they make over and over again. It will come in their willingness to fight their own reflexes to prioritize you. It will come in their steady moves toward closeness, even when their instinct screams for distance. This is how you know it's real. This is how you know the love isn't just in theory. It's alive, breathing, and proving itself through action.